Hempology was leaders in Canada in first coming up through Kristen with the idea of jamming the phones of the senators, and it really worked quite well, because in a very short amount of time, Bill C-15 went from an idea to a bill to its second reading and into the Senate. A lot of us in the activist community were surprised. I've been fighting various laws like this since 1995, and there's always time between when the laws get put in and when they're actually being enacted, but not in this case. It was just rushed right through extremely fast, and we were quite fortunate to have enough members of the Senate that it was slowed down, and committees were held, and many people testified at those committees, enough that some amendments were made. And many people think that the proroguing of government had a lot to do with the dissatisfaction of the Conservatives and changes, but they also tried to do a number of things. I really do believe that a lot of it was shutting down another committee that was exposing their flaws with dealing with the Afghan detainees. So they had a lot of reasons to just shut down all the committees, all the testimony, all the laws, and just start up from scratch with a Senate that was in control. And because it's a minority government, as long as they keep playing chicken successfully with the Liberals, they'll be able to keep getting laws and budgets passed through the House of Commons. So, they prorogued government for a number of reasons. Again, in part because the few really minor concessions made to C-15, were enough to upset them. But what was really scary for me was the control the media had over this entire situation. It was very rare that C-15 was mentioned specifically in the media. It would be mentioned generally as the drug crime bill, but not this like mandatory minimum for growers sort of thing. It sort of came out at the end. Most Canadians didn't hear about C-15 until just about at the end. And it's a good news story. Oh, the Senate's lighting up on things. All of a sudden it's like, if you have 200 plants and you're growing on your own property, out in the country, there's no kids, there's no guns, or other extraordinary circumstances, oh hey, we're going to give them a break, and we're not going to give them mandatory minimums. They didn't mention that those are the people whose properties they're seizing these days. So it's like, oh, we're not going to throw these folks in jail, but you know what? We can still bust them, we can still give them all sorts of stuff. It might not be a mandatory minimum, but we can still throw them in jail. That wasn't, so like, the amendments that the Senate made were better than the law that was before that. But it was something that was incredibly frustrating to have members of the Buyers Club, for example, coming in going, oh, did you hear about the amendments, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, did you know anything about what's going on before you read that? Like, really, and so it's something that the media has been instrumental in cloaking the government's agenda, and only recently has there been some light shed on that. But to see the CBC documentary that David Suzuki put out recently shows how entrenched this conservative ideology is in Ottawa and its different infrastructures. So there's a lot of work to be done on there. And so I'd like to spend a little bit of time thinking about the future, because the Conservatives, hell, right today, they could try entering something in. We have rarely much warning. We know they want to probably even rename it C-15, for crying out loud.
Like, how will we find out when it's...
We will have very little warning, and it's just going to get thrown in.
The floor
But it's something that we don't have the same avenue or that we did in the last event with the Conservatives and the committees, slowing things down and changing things. And one of the fortunate things from the last, I guess, kind of attempt of mandatory minimums is more and more activists such as myself have been getting more involved. The petition this week by the 3 members of Parliament, I think, was a sign of some of the backroom work that people have been doing in different parties. So even now, if people would write letters to the 3 members of Parliament that spoke out, in particular Scott Reid for being so brave, I think is a good step. And otherwise, you know, Denise Savoie and Keith Martin, who live here locally, you know, stepping into their offices if you're close by, or giving them a call, going to rallies and events that they come out to and say, yeah, you know, you're, you know, a really nice person, and, you know, I want to make sure you know I support you when you speak out on this issue. And we're quite fortunate to have those two politicians in town, and if a new law comes up, well, there's bound to be national rallies, and the two of them are going to come out and battle it out again. So, you know, kind of preparing for those things, working with the staff in all the political parties. We can't just think that the Liberals are going to do it, or the NDP, or the Green Party. You know, again, we can't ignore the Conservatives and think that they're just some blanket enemy. They're people too, and they have real experiences, and so, you know, with the world through their families and stuff. You know, so it's something that, you know, we can't, you know, think that the only way we can influence politics is a vote. In fact, because we've done so well at that, we can do a lot more with politics, and we don't get shot. Check it, because, and I think I'm a living example of that, because in many times and places.
You don't have to sleep with an AK-47 on your pillow.
No, I live a very peaceful life. If somebody threatens me or whatever, I'll call the cops, right? Like, you know, I am so close to being, you know, part of the Rotary Club and Chamber of Commerce, just by not allowing them to treat me differently. I have excellent relationships with all sorts of people. I've met the Premier, Gordon Campbell, many mayors of this town, and so you know, it's really important to just be approachable, be friendly, and you know, this whole idea that Stephen Harper has that, you know, people that grow and sell pot or smoke it are bad is just completely untrue, and most Canadians recognize that. And while some of us might be really mad about this and such, they've, I think, exposed themselves for who they are even more. And so I'm happy that Stephen Harper shot himself in the foot with this one recently, but it by no means will stop these mandatory minimums from coming, and the rhetoric from coming, and funds being put into building prisons so that if they ever do get the laws passed, you know, because they doubled the prison budget in the last year so they could build a bunch more. And there's cities like up north that are thinking, like Terrace, I think, was thinking, hey man, we need to build a prison because we can employ all these people, and then like everybody that gets busted doesn't have to go down south anymore, Port Alberni on the island. So it's being promoted in the north as a way of reviving local economies.
Or see if you don't work out right. You know what I mean?
You know, it's a never-ending sort of thing in some sense. So often I don't just deal with politics, or it can be very frustrating. But it is something where, you know, a certain amount of time, you know, making the phone calls, or, you know, and I got handouts for free in Mark Emery. I'm going to hand out at 420 later. It doesn't take much to make your voice count, and eventually all of these voices and all of these people coming out of the closet and fighting for your rights is what's really going to change the world in this issue and many more things. But you got one more point?
Yeah. Only 52 or was it 54% of the public voted in the last election. We do need a lot more.
Only 20% of our age group, guys.
Yeah, that's right. We do need your vote.
So
yeah.
We do really need the youth vote.
Yeah, the vote.
We do, man.
So with that,
throw that in there.
I'd like to
Well,
thank
what's the
everybody
best
for
party
coming.
to vote for? Because generally I just go for green.
I vote for the
Whatever you
candidate. I
want.
don't vote for the party. Vote for the person.
All right.
So I'll tell you that right now. Don't vote for the party.
Okay,
You know,
cool.
party politics sucks. Vote for the
That's right.
people. Make them accountable. Make sure
Yep.
you know them and
They
they know
know
their
you.
community, right?
Exactly.
And if they're not good members of the community, then forget about it. If they're just, you know,
Because we are part of that
party bloodsuckers, then we cut them off.
You know what I mean?
Okay. So yeah,
Thank you.
thank you very much, everybody, for coming.